What's up, guys? It's TechnoViking23 coming to you today with a little commentary about Mass Effect. Today is actually N7 Day, so happy N7 Day to any of you Mass Effect fans out there. It's also the 10th anniversary of the release of the original Mass Effect game. Kind of hard to believe it's been such a long time since we initially started our adventures on the Normandy with Commander Shepard. And almost a sad N7 Day. Given the state of the Mass Effect franchise right now, with the way things went down with Andromeda, but I'm going to get into that a little bit later. Today is also a day to reflect kind of on the love a lot of us had for the Mass Effect series. For me, it's one of my favorite game series of all time, if not my favorite game series of all time. I'm a total Mass Effect fanboy. I have Mass Effect collectibles. I have Mass Effect N7 and Spectre stickers on my car windows. I have Mass Effect art books. I have the Mass Effect novels, the comic books, the figures, the statues. I mean, N7 t-shirts. I just absolutely love the Mass Effect franchise. Even with the disappointment that Andromeda was, it still doesn't take away from how important Mass Effect was to me as a gamer and how much I just thoroughly enjoyed playing through the original trilogy and even parts of Andromeda, if I'm being completely honest with myself. It's not in such a great state right now, which kind of sucks, and EA has a lot to blame for that, and Bioware has a lot to blame for that, but some of my best memories in video games have come from playing through the Mass Effect trilogy. I've probably played the trilogy through completely 5 times. I've spent countless hours on it. I don't even want to think about how many hours I've spent playing all 3 of those games. In addition to Mass Effect 3's multiplayer, which was just an incredibly amazing surprise when it came out. Ended up being a very enjoyable aspect of the Mass Effect series and something I played quite a bit of. But just fell in love with all the characters. There were some characters I didn't really care for, but for the most part I loved all of the characters in Mass Effect. The universe is absolutely incredible. It's one of my favorite RPGs of all time. And it kind of came to me at a time when I was down on gaming. I was going through a bit of a lull. There just wasn't much that was catching my eye. I actually didn't discover the Mass Effect series until 2013, if you can believe that. It was never on my radar in 2007 when the game first released, and that's probably because I was playing a lot of MMOs on PC. I was kind of heavily into World of Warcraft and City of Heroes at that time. I wasn't really paying much attention to other games in general, especially console games. And I had no clue that Bioware had made this sci-fi RPG. No idea whatsoever. In fact, the first time I ever heard about Mass Effect, I think I was watching an Angry Joe video where he was talking about the endings for Mass Effect 3. And that was the first time I'd ever actually seen anything about the game. That's how oblivious I was towards it. So when the first Mass Effect and Mass Effect 2 came out, I was really heavily into PC gaming. I wasn't really paying much attention to the consoles at all, or anything else really that was going on with gaming that wasn't MMO related. So totally missed the boat on that one. Well, coming around 2013, and I was just in a real big gaming drought for myself personally. There wasn't much out. AAA gaming, as it still is now, was kind of in a lull. There just weren't any titles catching my eye, nothing that excited me. And a friend at work actually was, we were just talking in the break room, and he was like, well, you like RPG games, and we talked about gaming a lot. And he said, have you ever played Mass Effect? And I'm like, not really. I said, I've heard about it a little bit, but I've never actually played the game, don't know much about it. And he said, he knew I was a big Halo fan. I had played a ton of Halo. Most people knew that I absolutely loved Halo. And he said, it's very similar to Halo in some ways in terms of the sci-fi stuff. He said, but it's just so much deeper than what you get in Halo. He said, plus it's an RPG. There's a lot of good squad, relations and things like that, and just the story development is really, really good. So I decided to check it out. Now, I started doing some research online, and a lot of people were like, skip the first game. The first game is so boring compared to the others. And, of course, this is in 2013, so a game that came out in 2007. A lot of people who hadn't played the Mass Effect trilogy before were kind of being skeptical, like, oh, you don't want to start with the first game. Start with Mass Effect 2. It's the best game in the series. And I was like, you know what? No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go all the way to the beginning. I'm going to do this the real way, and I'm going to play through all 3 games. So I actually bought the first game on Xbox 360. I think it was like $4.99 at the time. It was super cheap. And I started playing through it, and I absolutely hated it. at the beginning, I couldn't stand the game. It was so slow and boring. The first initial, actually, the first part was pretty cool, where you go down to Eden Prime and you're fighting, Saren's forces for the first time. And you see the first Reaper, and it was pretty cool. And then all of a sudden they throw you into this, oh no, we're going to play Detective of the Citadel, and you run around the Citadel for 3 or 4 hours and do all these fetch quests. And I was like, this is so freaking boring when I first started, playing the game. And I've thought about just giving it up. I'm like, this isn't very good. And then I remembered back in the day, one of my favorite RPGs of all time is Final Fantasy IX. And when I first started playing Final Fantasy IX, it's back on the original PlayStation, I hated it. I absolutely hated the game, and it was like the first couple hours were just so boring. And I was like, you know what? I remembered that, and I said, I'm going to give it a chance, okay? Because when I gave Final Fantasy IX a chance, and I finally sat down and grinded through the first couple hours of the game, the next, 50 hours were awesome and so enjoyable. So I was like, I'm going to give this a try and see what happens. So as soon as I become a Spectre and I get to leave the Citadel and go fly around the galaxy and start exploring all the planets, and, I didn't care that it was a 2007 game. I didn't care that the graphics weren't really great or up to par. It just became this amazing experience, just running around everywhere, checking all the stuff out, finding what I could find, getting my squad together, going through the various missions, and figuring out that I could actually kind of play it however I wanted to. You could make all these different choices. You could, play the game in whatever order you wanted to. You could just run around and explore planets. You didn't even have to really go through and try to accomplish the end-game goal at first. You could just kind of do what you wanted to do. And I absolutely love that. So I played the first game. Once I got past that initial bit on the Citadel, I was absolutely hooked. And I probably stayed up for 2 days in a row. And I beat the first game within a week. I think I had about 60 hours in my first playthrough of the original Mass Effect. And I immediately went to GameStop and found a used copy of Mass Effect 2 and 3 and bought them both at the same time for probably $8 or $9. And I got home and I did the same thing with Mass Effect 2. I put it in, and from the opening of Mass Effect 2, I was hooked. It did the whole part where the Normandy gets blown up. It was such an interesting and different way for them to start off a game with oh, you're the main character, the main hero of the game. Well, we're going to kill you off right at the onset. And I was just like, because I didn't know what happened. I didn't know that you got rebuilt by Cerberus or any of that stuff. But it was so cool and so intense to start the game off like that. And then Mass Effect 2, of course, was a bit more linear focused. You couldn't do as much running around the galaxy and doing the exploration and things. They kind of limited some of the RPG effects. As the series went on, you could definitely tell EA was influencing quite a bit of it, because Bioware has always been about story and exploration and character development. But you can kind of tell EA was like, let's go on a more linear path. Let's not so much do the boring RPG things so we can attract more fans. But it worked out with Mass Effect 2. Mass Effect 2, in my opinion, is one of the best video games ever made. In fact, it's number 2 on my personal top 10 list. The number 1 game, which has never been unseated to this day, is still Super Metroid for the Super Nintendo. That's my favorite game of all time. And Mass Effect 2 is right up there with it. I absolutely loved Mass Effect 2. I love Mass Effect 1, though. To be honest with you, I always debate with myself which one I enjoyed more, because I love the RPG aspects and the kind of the tight story in Mass Effect. Because even though it's a trilogy, the original Mass Effect can stand on its own. Even if you'd never played the other 2 games, which is one of the problems I had with Andromeda. They kind of made Andromeda like it was going to be this opening chapter, because there's so many open-ended storylines and things going on with Andromeda. It doesn't feel like you ever really accomplish anything, which is where I go back to the first Mass Effect. It was like, wow, it's either way, the story could stand on its own. And so Mass Effect 2, played through it real quick, absolutely loved it, loved the new characters they brought into it. And then, of course, Mass Effect 3, which, I gotta be honest, I really didn't have too many issues with Mass Effect 3. By the time I got around to it, they had already kind of sort of fixed the endings. They had put the free ending DLC in. The endings were still kind of underwhelming, but unlike a lot of the Mass Effect fans, I wasn't going to let the last 20 minutes of one game kind of ruin what I had enjoyed hundreds of hours in already. I'm not, I kind of look at the overall body of work, and I'm like, I enjoyed 99% of my Mass Effect trilogy playthrough. And so when I got done with Mass Effect 3, I said, you know what? I'm going to go play the whole thing again. Because I made the first playthrough, I was like total Paragon. I was like, I'm going to do all the Paragon choices. Everything's going to be like super nice and super good. And the next time through, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do some Renegade choices. And I want to romance this different character. And I want to do some other things. And I've honestly played Mass Effect through 5 times. And I don't think any playthrough has been even remotely close to the others. In fact, on the 4th playthrough, I think I found this side mission that you could only get if you were like 80% Renegade or something like that. And I was like, holy crap, I've played through this game 300 some hours and I'm still finding new stuff to do. Just absolutely amazing. And even a game made in 2007, even today for me, it still stands on its own, and you can still play it. You can still enjoy it quite a bit. So, but I've kind of rambled on about my love for Mass Effect. Just one of my all-time favorite series. I wanted to touch on that today. I kind of remember back when I had that little fun epiphany in 2013 when I found like my all-time favorite gaming series for the most part. And it also kind of ruined me on games that have been coming out since, because a lot of AAA titles, especially RPG games and games that are being billed as, you know, the next great thing, they just never seem to be able to live up to Mass Effect for me, which is unfortunate. And as for the future, who knows what's going to happen? I think the future right now it's not great, because obviously Andromeda had a really rough go of it. Unlike a lot of the White Knighters for Bioware, I personally think Andromeda and Bioware deserve everything they got with Andromeda, because they released a garbage product, let's be honest, at first. The game should have been in development for at least another 6 months. And then the way they've totally shut the community off, you know, they're still hawking the multiplayer, and they're still putting out the microtransactions, and even today they introduced 2 new multiplayer characters in Andromeda. I'm like, who is playing Mass Effect for the multiplayer? Especially Andromeda's, which was nowhere near as good as Mass Effect 3's. And they're like, if you want the rest of the story, go read the books, go read the comics. You know, we're making money hand over fist apparently on microtransactions, but we don't want to give you some DLC with the Quarian arc. So I just never understood that. And, you know, Bioware's focused on Anthem, which is supposedly going to be their next great game. There's another Dragon Age supposedly in the works as well. And I think the way those 2 games are received is going to determine the future of Mass Effect. If Anthem comes out and it's a total hit, then BioWare and EA are probably going to be like, all right, let's give Mass Effect another shot. Whether they continue Andromeda, which I doubt at this point, or they go a new direction, it'll be interesting to see what they do with it. But I'm still a Mass Effect fan. I still love this series. I'm looking for collectibles. I'm still buying the books for Andromeda. I've read through the Nexus Uprising book, which is really, really good, actually. I wish they'd let the person who wrote the book actually do some of the story for Andromeda. But I'm going to continue to read through the novels and just kind of see what happens. And I just love everything I can get with the Mass Effect universe, with the lore, the characters, and everything. So I'll continue to be a fan. I'll continue to watch BioWare and see what they do with Mass Effect. I'm hoping it's not over with. I do hope we get another game. But at the same time, if we don't, I'll always have very fond memories of the time that I spent with these games, despite the big disappointment with Andromeda. Anyways, guys, that's going to do it for this video. Let me know your thoughts on Mass Effect in general. If you're having a good in-7 day, what Mass Effect means to you, anything like that, feel free to leave it down below in the comments. As always, thank you for watching. Hope you guys are having a great day, and I will see you again next time.